So I just wanted to talk to y'all about a warrior's code. What got me to thinking about it is I was watching The Wire, and the scene in the episode when Omar Little finally gets caught, he's talking to Bunk, but Bunk is trying to place murder on him of a woman. And Omar, he's just trying to explain to him, I didn't kill that woman. Bunk's going back and forth like, yeah, you maybe didn't kill her, but you killed somebody. And you need to pay for whatever crimes you've had, even if we have to stick this one on you. And so Omar, as Bunk is leaving, Bunk says to him, that golden rule. We know what the golden rule is. You do unto others as you would have others do unto you. And so as Omar says to him, why you getting all self-righteous? He said, while you sitting up here trying to hem me up, there's somebody out there that's free who actually committed that murder. And so he proceeds to tell Bunk, every man has to have a code. And so I got to thinking, what code was he talking about? Was he talking about a code of conduct, a code of ethics, or was he talking about a code of a warrior? And I bring all that up to say this. When we think about war, civilians are supposed to be off limits when men are engaged in mortal combat with one another. I always think about Tony Montana in the movie Scarface when Sosa wanted him to kill that reporter, and he told him no women, no kids. And that's actually what got Sosa on his backside, because he didn't go through with the assassination because the man he was supposed to kill had the women and children. And so I want to transition that to the show Snowfall. I know we all watched that show, but on the latest episode, Leon got into it with a rival crew. They ended up banging. A couple of an innocent child got killed. And so in connection with that, we know that women, children, old people usually are the victims of gang wars. And so the code of a warrior kind of gets thrown out the window. And so before we have this discussion, I want to talk about Snowfall. What was your take on that last scene from the last episode when the two gangs get into this gunfight and a young child gets killed? Who's responsible, in your opinion? I'll start with you, Silk.
The responsibility is it's twofold. We can start off by just saying she was in the car with dudes with guns to start off. My second opinion would be the guy in the car that was supposed to be protecting her was the first one to initiate the conflict. So he indirectly put her in danger by recklessly ignoring his warrior code. Because his first code was to protect. Because I'm pretty sure that's why they had guns in there with them to protect them on their way to grandma's house. You know, you get that little Red Riding Hood analogy right there. They ran into the big bad wolves right there on their way to grandma's house, Dude could have just told old boy to pull off,
Right, but keep in mind that there was an unforeseen occurrence that happened. The ice cream man. He kind of impeded their progress from just keeping it pushing. And it gave them that moment to kind of see each other. And I was just wondering, like, in that moment, because you're really life or death. When you look over and you see your enemy, like in that moment, do you just pretend like you don't see him? And keep it pushing, like they say, live to fight another day? Or do you bang out in that moment, knowing that you have a couple of civilians in the car? Because I blame, like, if this woman knows that her man and his people are at war, I think it's her responsibility to protect her child. No, I'm not riding with y'all. Anything can go down. Murphy's Law is always in effect as far as I'm concerned.
but how would she move around though? All right, playing devil's advocate. Um, she was in the car, so I could suspect that she wanted to be there to protect her daughter, and they had to travel in this type of way because of the situation between both gangs. Okay, she wouldn't have been able to walk by herself with her and her daughter. That would have put them definitely in line for a kidnapping or something like that, to be shot on the street, to be an easy victim to a easy casualty to the war. So it's a double-edged sword. She shouldn't, I still believe though, even though the ice cream man was there in the front, that was a moment right there where I think of that Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris, fight where they was just staring off, and then everybody, they both knew they can kill each other, but didn't nobody want to make that first move until the cat broke the silence, and then that was it. Um, it's an unfortunate situation that, but both of them was wrong, for being there and for doing what they do, I guess.
Right. And so that leads me into the second part of this discussion, because I do personally feel like in the streets, there are no true warriors in the sense because of the layout of the land. Most times when people go to war, they try to go to a neutral territory and have their conflict. Yeah, we know that there's going to be collateral damage in a true conflict, but in the hood, I don't think you can have a true warrior's code. I think that's idealistic because, as they say, all is fair in love and war. And we do live in a dog eat dog world. You're going to fight. You see your enemy, like they say, it's on sight. People get shot up all the time, hanging around people that they don't even know did some dirt. And they're not even looking at the other person. It's like, oh, you with that fool? Well, you my enemy too. And so I just wanted to have a discussion with you guys on the warrior code, where chivalry comes from. And I know you guys had some choice words when we discussed this earlier. And so what is your true take on the warrior code? Is it practical or is it fantastical?
Um, if you're asking me,
I'm
my
asking you.
yeah, my take on the Warriors Code and whether or not it's impractical or not. Um, I tend to look at it as I think that it was necessary to have a code, and I think that I think at some point warriors needed to have some type of code, because I think it would be impractical to think like when you say that all's fair in love and war. I get that. You wanna think that when you're, or you would think that when you're fighting somebody or you're in the midst of a back and forth combat, if you will, that you're allowed to pull out all the stops. And in battle, I would guess that would be true. But just think of the times when you're not in battle, and you don't, and we've talked about this personally, about how, a lot of these people who do come in conflict with each other, they still have to roam in the same places, maybe in the same circles of people, kind of, you know what I mean? So they would engage with each other in kind of circumstances where it wouldn't be a battle situation, but we still had these tensions because me and you done fought, even though we're not in a arena right now, if you will, So I think there had to be a code when it's all said and done, because of those times when we're engaging and we're not on the field of battle. I don't want to have to watch my back and have to wonder about if you're going to stab me in the back just because I'm turned around to eat my food or whatever the case is. So, I think there had to be a code in place for, just for situations like that. So I do think that when you're not in the midst of battle. I think is when the code for warriors in particular, actual combatants, when that would kind of apply. But yeah, just to answer your question on that, I guess that's my point.
What about you, Silk? You think it's practical or fantastical to have a warrior's code in this day and age? We can't hear you.
In this day and age, and there's no warrior code. You hear me now?
I hear you.
It's not. It was a time when I was young. I grew up in the inner city. When we all grew up in the same neighborhood. You know what I'm saying? So there was a time when the warriors were about to go to war. They told the children and the old folks to go in the house. Hey, it's for to be bad around here. Go in the house. Don't be around here. It was a time where if you had a problem with someone and they called themselves your enemy, they wouldn't do anything to you in front of your mother, in front of your kids. You get a pass. I'm gonna catch you. You know what I'm saying? But you get that pass. It was a time where wouldn't nobody do nothing to your grandma's house. You know what I'm saying? Nowadays they shoot up your grandma's house. They shoot your mama. They shoot your kids because I hate to even have that analogy, but they had that GTA type of thought. It's spray now, let you respawn later. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a warrior, because it's a bunch of cowards that have to do that, because if it wasn't, 9 times out of 10, if it wasn't for the gun, they wouldn't win the altercation.
Right.
Yeah.
The gun is the great equalizer.
Definitely. It's actually OP. You know what I'm saying?
No,
It's actually OP, man.
It's funny because that reminds me of like a conversation me and Joe V just had recently about how just a lot of these guys really aren't as tough as they would make it out to be, and how guns have become that equalizer, and and how men are viewed, or masculinity is viewed based off of how many gun kills some of these guys have. When you take that element away, and how does that change that look on his masculinity now, to people who place that type of value on a man, which we said and stated that it's a crazy view and the wrong view to have, to think that masculinity is attached to how many kills you have.
But you only really get one kill, G. After you do that, the police gonna grab you. Now your life gone. So, and then your masculinity might not be there anyway. My bad for cutting you off.
You talking about that?
What'd you say, Jody?
I said you talking about that thug in love.
Yeah.
After the police get a hold of you, and you gotta go and meet your cellmate.
What'd you say? Do the homie.
Homies over hoes.
Hell no, man. Listen, I swear to God, I if I had one wish, dude, I'd just take away bullets. Like the ability to ever make anything shoot out something fast enough to penetrate another body. Niggas, I had to throw spears to hunt from here on out. You know what I'm saying? It'll just change the landscape. It'll bring back masculinity, bring back bravado, because your mouth won't overtalk your skill.
Right.
Yeah.
And you won't be taking advantage of people who you consider prey, but they really not prey. It's only because you got the gun. You know what I'm saying? You won't walk up and strong arm no shit. That's what I want. Let strong arms. I respect that more so than a motherfucker just coming up and robbing you with a gun. You know what I'm saying? Oh, you gonna really take the chance of strong arm me? Okay, well you get fired on. And if you beat me up and take my shit, ouch. You know
Right.
what I'm saying?
I truly do believe that's where the integrity of the martial world lied. And the fact that you had to be skilled with your hands in close quarters combat. You had to be skilled with a sword. You couldn't just have a sword like any fool can carry a gun. It shoots a super fast projectile. How good do you have to be to do that? You can literally spray somebody. And so, like, I won't lie, I have guns, but it's for the purpose of protecting myself in a world full of cowards. I would prefer to be a pugilist.
Absolutely.
How we grew up. We grew up fighting with our fists. But the world of the coward, they had to create a gun. And I won't get into that because that's a whole nother rabbit hole.
We got to talk about that one day.
Yes, most definitely. But just thinking about how you talked about the breakdown of the warrior code from the martial world to the world we live in, the warrior code is actually what chivalry is. Chivalry, like today, we have, you hear a lot of women talking about chivalry is dead. But I don't think they understand what the beginnings, the foundation of chivalry actually is or was. It was a code amongst warriors so that when they were in close quarters with one another, they didn't go off and kill one another. And some information that I found said that chivalry emerged around the 10th century in France. Over time, leading up to the English coming into power, Great Britain, which is about 600 years later, chivalry, that's when it began to transmorph into men treating women a particular way. It brings out that around the 16th century, chivalry became stylized. And that was mainly because they were trying to limit the movement of women or restrict their behavior from any deviation from their ideals about how women should be. It says a beautiful woman, a beautiful female was gradually more unacceptable. And so I think they were trying to sit up here and contain their sexuality. And so when a man was in a woman's presence, he began to open doors for her. You know, we've seen the movies where they would lay the cape down for her over a puddle. But even though the article doesn't say, I speculate that they were doing that as a means to sit up here and show off to one another just how well they can stunt for this woman. I can treat her better than you can treat her. It's almost the beginning of the players' ball, if you will.
No, that's exactly what it sounds like to me, man. Like a bunch of dudes, like, man, let me show you how good I can treat this bitch. You know, let me flap this bitch in front of you, like, and you know what's crazy is that you know, they when you speak of it, when you talk about this, the way that it's described, it almost sounds as if like the women were used as props. You know what I mean, in these situations. So the stunting had nothing to do with the women involved in these situations. You know what I mean? It was just like, you know, women were like canes and coats. You know what I mean? In that time, let me show off my coat. Let me show off my cane. Let me show you how good I treat my coat. Let me put all these diamonds and sparkles on this coat. You know what I mean? So yeah, you know, it was women were kind of used as props in these situations, which is crazy, you know. But continue. I'm sorry.
No, you know, that's good stuff. The reason I bring all that up is because I agree with you all. In the modern world, there is no true warrior code. I really do think that's just idealistic thinking. Just because of the way that a lot of males are emotional. They don't know how to process seeing an enemy and keeping their heater, their thumper in his holster or in their waist. But when you think about what the warrior code really stems from, what it was meant to do, and how it started off as being chivalrous, being kind to your fellow warriors so you all don't just kill each other off, and where we are today. And even with what you just said about the women being a prop, what it led up to, it got me to thinking how this translates into groups of men, who's a boss and who's a leader. Because only a leader can sit up here and look at, okay, that's my enemy over there, but I'm in charge of these people, in charge of their safety, making sure they get home to their loved ones, so on and so forth. And so I'm going to act accordingly and behave in such a way where they can see my actions and follow in suit. Whereas a boss will be like, go get him, blah, 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 blah. He's barking orders to his peoples. And then it's emotional. Innocent people die is usually never really the people you're trying to get at. And so I just wanted to use this warrior code to springboard onto the topic of bosses versus leaders.
Okay. Silk, what you got?
To be continued.